Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Princeton Public Library. My name is Janie Herman, and I'm the manager of adult programming, and it's my great pleasure to welcome you to our community room this evening for the annual Phyllis Marchand Leadership Lecture program. Tonight, we are thrilled to have Joanne Ramos, author of The Farm, joined by Samantha Skey, CEO of Media, to discuss the role and possibilities of art in the times of polarization. Just a few housekeeping notes before we begin and before I welcome Deborah Marchand to the podium to introduce the speakers in the series. Please note this room is equipped with a hearing loop that pairs with T-coil technology. If you require hearing assistance, you can enable your devices, or we have headphones on the piano for your use. We kindly ask you to silence those electronic devices during the talk and hold your questions, as there'll be a chance for audience Q&A at the end. And I will run a microphone around while we do that so everybody can hear. So the Marchand Leadership Lecture is dedicated to inspiring excellence in community-based leadership. It's an annual library event held in honor of Phyllis Marchand, Princeton Township's longest-serving mayor and a leader and mentor in the community for 5 decades. The series is organized each year by a committee that includes several members of Phyllis's family, as well as the friends of Phyllis, including Terry McIntyre, Pam Hirsch, and Karen Giserni. So to tell you more about Phyllis and to introduce our speakers for the evening, I'd like to welcome Deborah Marchand, Phyllis's daughter, to the lectern. I'm shorter than you. There you go.
Before each event in the Phyllis Marchand Leadership Lecture Series, I spend a little time reflecting on my mom's life, her accomplishments, and perhaps influence. I look for parallels between her and our speakers, and then I try to bring it back to the library, because this place, this building, and all it offers belong to everyone. But today, for some reason, I've had a lot of difficulty preparing. Not because the women, Samantha Skey and Joanne Ramos, aren't amazing, because they are. Not because I can't draw parallels between their careers and how they empower women, because I can. Ms. Ramos through her writing on social classes, structures, and race, Ms. Skey's commitment to women's representation in all media, and my mom's goal of supporting women in roles in government. But because today is St. Patrick's Day, and for some reason, I can't get out of my head a green little sparkly bowler hat that resides in our basement and would find its way out onto my mother's head annually on this day. And while we are not Irish, Phyllis always welcomed an occasion to celebrate, and some of you might even remember a flag representation on a dress. She especially loved celebrating the library, and not just at the galas. As an ardent supporter of community involvement and collaboration, she recognized the importance of engaging and participating in library events. In fact, I discovered a 2011 article about the library's Prince William and Kate Middleton wedding watch party. Apparently, my mom, wearing, and I quote, a long black and white dress and black feather boa, told the reporter that she woke up at 4 a.m. to get here before the doors opened. She said, "It's great to see so many people here at the library celebrating history as a community." And for my mother, that's what it was all about and always about, community and building community. What she knew was that diverse perspectives, people of all colors, backgrounds, sexes, religions, are needed to foster healthy discourse. She also felt that that women's empathy and focus on communities' well-being was lost in traditional political structures. So as we come up on the 4th anniversary of my mom's passing, I encourage each of you to support our community and support this library. The library is and should continue to be a safe space where we can share ideas without fear of recourse and judgment, where the ability to research and to learn should not be banned or criminalized, and where we can advocate for ourselves as well as for those who need us to advocate for them. Because this library's vision, after all, is a vital cornerstone of community, connection, and where curiosity and wonder flourish. And with that, I welcome Ms. Joanne Ramos and Ms. Samantha Skey.
Yay. Okay. Should we just get into it, get right into it? Here we go. Okay. Thanks for coming, you guys. I grew up here and grew up in this library because it was the 70s. We didn't have babysitters or anything like that. We would walk up here after school with many of your children. We see familiar parents from our youth, and we would mess around just enough to not get kicked out, but maybe get kicked out sometimes. And it was always a very safe place, and a place that I remember being when we were very young. Over there was the children's section. I'm not sure if it still is. Where truly you could feel very safe, and you would always run into people you knew, and it's been delightful to see all the work. I remember when Harry Levine was working on building up the new version of the library. It's just an amazing institution. We moved back here 5 years ago and are so delighted to see that everything is still wonderful and safe and secure, but also has flourished into incredibly dynamic spaces. So thank you to the library keepers. So Joanne's a good friend, as well as an incredibly impressive voice, I think, in the literary world and in any conversation you are fortunate to find yourself in with her. When I first asked her to do this, it struck me that, Joanne went to Princeton, her daughter's going there next year, but also her voice in times of isolation and art, and the way that those things interplay seems particularly poignant to me. And of course, because she's Joanne, she's going to need to start by telling you how profoundly uncomfortable she is, or something along those lines, and how making art amid. Anyway, Jo, how do you feel? She's writing a book right now. Mm-hmm. How do you feel? How is it to sit down and do what you do in writing amazing, best-selling, transportive novels?
Okay, well, first, thank you for having me here today. It's so exciting to be back in Princeton and to be with people in community in a time when I think many of us in the room, you read the news and maybe you feel you need community and you happen to be reading on your phone by yourself and you hanker for it. So I'm glad to be here tonight. And that kind of leads me to your question, Sam, because I have to admit that the divisiveness, which is what we're talking about tonight, polarization, the divisiveness of our politics and the ugliness of our interactions and the full-blown epistemological crisis that I think we find ourselves in, that we don't just disagree with each other, we often have different facts to support our beliefs. We have a different truth system now, where there are little different pockets of truth. So I think about these things, and I get overwhelmed sometimes on how to speak to my children about what they're seeing in the world, how to process for myself what I see in the world. And I will admit that every time I sit down to write, every time, I have a little reckoning with myself. Mm-hmm. And I ask myself if in this time, if writing a made-up story, which is what I do, I write novels, is the best use of my time and talents. And I just felt like I had to say that. I said, Sam, can we start with that? Because I do believe in art, and yet I end up writing. I end up writing because it's a compulsion. I end up writing because it's how I process the world, and I'm engaged in this book. And still, I feel those doubts. Mm-hmm. At the same time as I have those doubts about the making of art, I have turned to it time and again, always, but especially in the past year and in the past 6 months. Mm-hmm. And I think I said to you, a friend of mine sent me a piano piece right after, in November. I'm going to try to stay out of politics. In November, I was kind of low, and a friend of mine sent me a Schubert piece. It was one of his impromptus. It's the G-flat. I'd never heard it. I've listened to it pretty much every day since then. I listened to it this morning to get me through. I've been in bed because of this stupid foot. I've read 7 novels in 2 weeks or so. And so I think how I feel about art and its possibilities, which is the theme tonight in Polarization, is both. It's a lot of questioning about my making of it at the same time that I need it and I turn to it and I find nourishment in it, or maybe even escape in it, although I don't really agree with the art as escape thing, but I know that that is a way to also use art at this time.
And we had talked about sort of the contemplating stories and even fiction versus, or not versus, fiction alongside other types of writing, other types of reading. And you had said, I thought it was very cool, you said that in reading, picking up a piece of fiction is sort of a leap of faith, and that we might be able to perhaps, tell me about that, about fiction right now, what it could do for you, for others.
Yes, well, I was thinking about how in this moment we're in, so many of our interactions with anything new and unfamiliar are closed. Like we come to new things sometimes, oftentimes, especially if the person you're seeing or the experience you're seeing is different from you, different how you look, politically, for me, that's the hard one sometimes to get across, without a true openness. And one thing I was thinking about a lot with art is because, and especially with fiction, maybe because it's made up, it allows for a different kind of encounter. The word encounter is actually from the Latin incontrare, and it has two flavors. And the first flavor of the word encounter is that, in contra, incontrare, which means against. So it's the notion that it's like a military encounter. You encounter the new and the unfamiliar with your hackles up, you're a little wary, with a closed fist, just in case, you know. The second flavor of the word encounter is used in religious writing. It's a religious encounter, a spiritual encounter. It is the notion of meeting the unfamiliar and the new with openness. Pope Francis has spoken a lot actually about the goal of humanity in his eyes as creating a culture of encounter, the idea of being open to it. And I do feel that art at its best allows for that first kind of encounter, especially, not the first, the second kind of encounter.
Not this one.
Yeah, not this one, with the openness. Right. Because art approaches things with complexity and at a slant. It's not hitting you on the nose, but it's not propaganda, right? At its best, I think art, and maybe always, art shouldn't be something where I'm trying to convince you. It's where I'm asking questions, and hopefully you engage in that in reading the novel. And I was actually thinking, especially with fiction and stories, and I don't know why this is. I don't know if it's because for millennia we've gathered around hearths and fireplaces to tell stories, or because most of us had a beloved, a parent, or someone reading us stories when we were young, or just because the contract is clear. It's a made-up thing. So if you open a fictional book, you know it's made up, that you're willing to take a ride with that narrator. You're not asking the narrator, what do you believe? Who'd you vote for? Whatever. You're just taking a ride, and if it's a good story, you go along on the ups and downs, and you're spit out in the other end, and maybe you see things a little different, or maybe you see a circumstance a little different, or maybe it's just nothing so explicit, but it's a softening. And I think that kind of openness, at least I can speak for myself, it's not something I'm proud of. I don't bring it to as many things as I'd like to, that kind of openness, as I used to. I think especially now, especially I read the news, and I think I come out into the world armed because I just feel besieged by all the news. And so I think there is something that art makes possible.
And you talked about developing or maintaining that muscle of going to something, other humans, to art, to reading, with an openness, because I don't feel like that's our resting place right now, that walking into a room with open trust is necessarily, you know, when we even in the title and positioning of this conversation, that you described to me, and it made me think later, like you have to keep working that muscle, and perhaps I don't know, how do we do that? How do you do it?
I don't know that I know how we do it, but I do think that what is amazing about literature and art, I can speak more to literature, is that if you're creating complicated stories with complicated characters and trying to reflect the complexity of the world and the people in it, I think that is a muscle that we've lost. And I don't, to some degree, it's because so many of our interactions are digital, whether it's Twitter or social media or sound bites, and it's reduced and it's flattened and it's made simple. And some of it's our politics, and that we're demonizing each other so often from both sides. And I think some of it also is, so I have a couple of friends who teach writing workshops, and they were saying, this will lead back to your question, but they have found that in the writing workshops, when the students read each other's work, often they will start to criticize sort of the morality of the characters.
Interesting.
They're two different writer-teachers. Maybe other people don't feel it, but these two, one at Columbia, one at Skidmore, they'll say, well, that guy was being sexist, or he was being, and needing to be righteous in their criticisms, maybe more than allowing the characters to be complicated. Mm-hmm. And I think that's part of our problem today as a politic, I guess, is that we have to be able to hold paradox and complexity, even if you disagree with someone and choose to vote or do something different, to at least understand that things aren't black and white, that we're not good and evil, that there are many reasons why people disagree with you or choose a different path than you, and that that's okay. The whole point of democracy, or the whole possibility of democracy, is you have a loyal opposition, which means you can disagree and still see that person as a human person that you can debate with, and hopefully in the contest of ideas, choose better next time. That entails holding paradox, and I feel like novels, much more than other types of art, allow for that, exercising that muscle.
That's, I think that's probably true of the writing and of the picking it up and of the discussion. I don't know, we were talking about how I might really enjoy a novel that also someone else enjoys, whom I do not particularly agree with on many things, but because we're entering a space that's different, that's made up. I think the fact that it's fiction, for some reason, I am gravitating to fiction. As much great nonfiction as there is, and as much self-help as I probably need, I end up in fiction. Like, I'm back to like the stories, and the wilder, the better. It feels like that is a potential unifier. Like, some other people might like this movie or this book, again, with whom I don't agree about many things. But we could maybe agree on that this is a really exciting story. It's okay.
And I agree with you. I think it's the made-upness, and also I was thinking, that if I were to pick someone with whom I really disagree, that in normal life I might never enjoy speaking to him. And let's say...
I feel like that's specific.
No, I'm not going to pick the top dog. I'm going to pick someone else in the middle that I don't like. And he wrote his autobiography or a memoir. And you, who I respect a lot, and I know you're very bright and curious, and you read a lot, you said to me, oh my God, you have to read person X's memoir or autobiography. You will love it. I mean, it's not, maybe not you'll love it, but it's great. I would probably say to you, NFW, no way. And if you forced me to read that, I would read it in the spirit of the first and contrary.
Right, with resistance, yes.
Now, if you were to say person X, who I still really don't like, you're like, okay, you're not going to believe it, but he wrote a novel. Mm-hmm. And it is gorgeous, and it is amazing, and you have to read it. And I would probably still say no, but there's a chance that I would pick it up, and if it's as good as you say it is, I would start reading it, and I would get sucked in because it's a great novel, because you told me it was and it is. And I wouldn't forget. I think I would forget, if it really was a great novel, that person X wrote it. And I think it is different. There is that openness, maybe just because it's made up.
We need really good fiction then right now. Perhaps that's not black and white, and that's not.
Yeah, I think
and seeking back, I feel like I've found some interesting works, probably just because with my son going through high school, books come back up, and you're like, that actually didn't have like good and evil. It was more complicated, and perhaps some of our narratives have become good and evil.
Black and white and simplified, and it's also the market. I mean, I think I've told you this before, that when I was deciding which editor to go with my novel, The Farm, every single editor said, you have to change the ending. They wanted the main character, to have a happier ending. Mm-hmm. And I ended up going with an editor who I just really clicked with and loved, but she left open the door that she would concede to me that I didn't want to change it. Because it was one of their big books, they had Amazon read it. And Amazon came back, and their notes were, you got to change the ending. You're going to sell more books if you change the ending. And I will say to Susan Campbell, who has since passed away, my editor's credit, she was like, okay. I was like, you can, I mean, you bought it. I was like, but I don't want my name on that. It's not, I don't, and she agreed. And so we didn't change it.
And
but
you really did sell plenty of books too, I would say.
Yes, I mean,
She's
maybe,
like a
I don't
New
know,
York Times bestseller.
but the fact that there is that pressure at all to make it palatable, and that's, I guess, my point before about how we need complicated stories. We don't need, I don't know that right now we need more palatable, bland stories, right? We need complicated stories and to exercise that complicated muscle. So I think that is part of it too. That as a commercial enterprise, which I get it, that the editors are balancing this, the publishing houses, but to try to find that tricky line where you're challenging people too.
And there is some really great art. I mean, even, I'm going to go there, but in the binge space, I think that there's more programming that's complicated on the streaming platforms. That's not quite so like the police procedural where you know that genius format where you know the answer like right before it's going to happen, and you know who's the bad guy and the good guy, which is very soothing, I think, to many of us to watch television that way, or to read a book where you're like, I predicted it, instead of being left with like, wait, I didn't really get that. Like, why? And that's the ending to your book, which I thought was genius. Maybe there was not a good guy and a bad guy. They were all weirdly complicated, I guess, and human.
Yeah, I definitely didn't think that they were. I tried not to make anyone a good guy or bad guy, and definitely got some flack for that. But I mean,
but it's more challenging. It makes you think about the issue and the subject matter instead, and talk about it more openly. And it is a muscle, because I'm always looking for and I think probably more and more with the polarization. Like, I'm looking for the good guy and the bad guy, and like you look for those markers when you're at a dinner of, there's a bad guy, there's a good guy, and you and I get the head fake across the. That's one of those. We need to, but we're trying not to do that. So another thing you mentioned, this is a little of a non sequitur, but we were talking about fiction, nonfiction, and I am, for whatever reason, I think many people have been gravitating to fiction. I feel it profoundly. Audible's numbers are way up and apparently have flipped very much in favor of fiction and reading entire series. But you also mentioned the deeper kind of James Baldwin concept of explore the questions behind the answers, and I was wondering what when you contemplate reading and writing, do you start with, on this book, do you start with an answer or a question, or?
I don't have any answers. I really don't have. I have very, very few answers, so I always start with the question. I think I have writer friends who start with a plot or a character, and I really do start with the questions or the ideas that sort of obsess me, and then I try to find a story that can take that through a book. So with The Farm, it took 1.5 years of writing stories about the ideas I wanted to explore until I found The Farm. And this book has taken like 3-4 years of different stories that aren't good enough to carry a book. But I'm still into the idea, and I'm finally onto something. I mean, who knows? You never know, but that I'm engaged in and that I'm very excited about, because I think it's a story that's compelling enough to ask the questions I want to ask, and that will hopefully interest people.
And are you able to isolate yourself from external noise? I mean, we've talked about there is no person who's, when a person says, I'm not political, you're like, okay.
Like,
how does that go for you?
Lucky you, you're not political, because it kind of affects all of us. But, well, I have that daily reckoning where I sit there, I'm like, is this what I should be doing? But I also, as you know, I'm politically active, and I teach in the Bronx. I did in the fall, and I'm hoping to start once I can walk again. And so for me,
made us all canvas in Pennsylvania.
I made them all. I got 50, 60 people to canvas.
Like, again?
I think when I have those little crises of faith every single morning, because that's just the kind of person I am, as Sam knows, unfortunately.
That's wonderful.
The reality is, it doesn't have to be either or. There's a Peter Seeger song that's a little bit about that. He's like, if music could bring peace to the world, something like that, then I would just be a musician. So the way I balance it is I write every day, and then I'm still trying to keep a little foot into something more active, because that's what I have to do.
Do you feel the external world infringing on your subject matter? Like, do you feel?
1,000,000%.
Yeah.
I have I haven't written teenagers ever, so I'm
Are you writing
two.
teens?
Yeah, 16, 17.
I haven't read
right
it
now.
yet, by the way, or I haven't
I
read pieces yet.
know.
I'm just holding off. I need to have like a deep.
Okay.
I need a reckoning first.
I've asked Sam a few times to read my
Which
book,
is a
and
great
she keeps
honor.
on answering, so
a great
it's fine.
honor. I have not done it yet.
Yeah, but you haven't
I have
answered.
attention issues. That's my mom. No, I'm on it. But you're writing teens?
I'm writing teens, and I'm realizing I need to decide on the year, because if it's now, it would really change how they see the world. And some of what I'm exploring is the stories we tell ourselves and tell our kids, and how that can shape things. And I would argue on a greater scale, some of the problems we're seeing today. I mean, there are a million problems that we're seeing today, but some of it, I think, is that the stories that we've begun to tell ourselves as a society about who we are and who is the other and who is deserving and what we owe each other is really different. I'm sorry, I'm smooshing away from my book a little bit, but just to say, there was a time, like when I moved to America with my family, I was 6. My dad was a big Reaganite. We differed in our politics, but like he really, I feel like the days of the Reagan Republican are days I miss,
My dad would have been right there with you.
yeah, like, and he would, and it was fun. Like, we could debate things. It wasn't polarized. It was just we disagreed. But there was a shining city on a hill. That's the story we told about America. We came to America because of the idea, and no story is perfect. No story is real. But like the story, the idea of the American dream, that is why we came here. The idea of a melting pot. The idea of e pluribus unum, out of many one. I mean, our story now is American carnage. That's what the story we tell about America. Is it a surprise that we're completely, when the story that's diffused in the media and that we absorb and that our teenagers absorb? So now I'm back to my book. So I was like, oh, I have to change all this if it's being told now. And so I think I'm going to set it back at 21.
It's going to be, because we don't even know what's going to happen to these teens,
Yeah.
God, except that they will be, I don't know.
But isn't it like they're still becoming? This is one of my biggest challenges right now about being a parent who tried to raise my kids to be aware of the world. But now I'm like, maybe don't read everything because that's stressful, or they feel things so much and I don't know what's happening. I'm bewildered, so I don't even know how to explain to them why the values I've tried to teach them are not the values they feel will be rewarded or celebrated or the way to win anymore. I'm like, well, winning is not everything. I don't even know. I don't even know what
Yes, it is. Don't be one of those parents. Winning matters.
But anyway, I just think that the stories we tell ourselves matter, and so that's kind of what my second book is about with these teens, and I don't know the story that...
I'm excited for that, and I'm glad it's not today, because I think today, even the way we're being, I mean, there's so much interesting technology that, and sort of an economy of technology that's driving the way that content is surfaced and the way that we're fed, and unless we choose to buy the newspaper we like and, watch predetermined programming and basically put this away, you have no choice what you're consuming. You really don't. It's deeply...
You mean the algo?
Yeah, the algo plus the AI plus the fact that this definitely doesn't know anything, but the economy of digital is fed by hate, rage, fear, are the most profound drivers of interaction online. So if you can enrage, scare, or cause hate, you are much more likely as a digital platform to make $20 for your shareholders versus $2, which is like happy, quotes, or even nice long stories. If a post is this long, you're going to get about 20% of the engagement you might get if it's this long and just a nasty note about loathing of AOC, something like that.
But also that's short and it's flattened and there's no complexity.
Oh, it's terrible.
It's one way.
Yeah. So we're being fed and it is if not for, we'd have to, like the benign billionaires have to buy the media or something. And that didn't go so well this last election. Yeah. Even the nice guys capitulated. But back to, so exploring characters. How do you teach kids to read? I know we didn't talk about this, so it came to me later. Like, how do you, I know, sorry. But to read the way that I don't know, the way that you read with delight. Maybe not the way you read.
No, I'm saying that because my third doesn't read. So I'm like, oh, I don't know if I'm the right person to answer that question.
You're perfect because you have
and a third
various.
non.
Well, maybe it's you can't teach it. Maybe they have to.
I gave up and now I'm trying again. I mean, I used to believe before my third child that if you could just find the right book and the right story, you could turn anyone into a reader. I really believed that. I don't know. I haven't been able to do it, Henry. Sally, I haven't been able to do it. I don't know what to do. And I really did try a lot of different stuff, like even Dogman. We have every Dogman, which is barely a book, but like I'm like, that's good, you know?
They consume differently.
I mean, one thing I'll say for the older kids, because even my older two, once they finally got their phones in 8th, 9th grade, and then they stopped reading, and now they're back to reading. But one thing that I've been thinking about a lot that my son, who's in college now, said to me is he's downloading all of those apps that keep you from using your phone and your laptop, Screen Zen and all this kind of stuff. And I said, why are you doing that? And he said, Mom, I realized that I'm spending 2 or 3 hours a day wasting it on short form video or binging entertainment. He even included there like just so-so shows, which we all need sometimes. But he said, it's not just the 2 or 3 hours I spend a day consuming this stuff and wasting my time. He's like, but afterwards I feel such lethargy. And I don't know why that really struck me because I feel the same way. I'm going to throw in, I don't even know if this is fully true, but it's something I've been thinking about a lot, which is I do think it's one of the differences between entertainment and art, that entertainment is meant to satisfy you. That's what it's for. It's a product, right? If you want something, you want to feel a little bit the free fall of love, I'll watch a rom-com. If I want to have a jump scare, I watch my thriller. And I watch Survivor with my son to escape things, my younger son. But the person that watches that entertainment in the beginning, before I binge watch, and the person after I binge watch is the same person. Because they're just trying to make me happy and satisfied. Whereas art is trying to challenge you more than that. I don't know, and it asks more of you. It asks more of you, I think. And so anyway, this is back to Owen, my son. He was saying, I don't feel like that when I read a book. I don't feel that lethargy. He's like, but when I'm on my screen so much and binging stuff. He's like, I really do just feel this. I just don't. He's like, I'm not depressed after. I just don't want to do anything. Right. And I never really thought about that, except for that I have that same experience. I have that same experience. I just saw a play on Friday that I didn't even really understand, but I definitely didn't feel lethargic after. We talked about it all dinner. Like we were like on. It was Sam Beckett's shorts, like, which were great, the last one, but the first one I had no idea, and it was the Irish brogue, and I didn't know what was happening. And I still felt really like alive to the world, despite being clueless for 2/3 of that thing.
Well, I think it's also when you watch theater or read a really good book, you know someone tried really hard there. Like they made you, I watch theater and I'm not always totally compelled or don't get it, and the seats are really small, and I twitch a lot in the city. And but I'm like, look at those actors or singers. They are trying so hard. Like they are bringing everything they have. They're like sweating and spitting, and it's so impressive. And the same thing when you read a really challenging book. I'm like, this writer was thinking. Like they were really, I don't know. They're trying to work out something challenging where the little quote cards, no one's thinking. I promise you, any post you see that I put up, there wasn't a lot of thought behind it. So I think that there's something in me that looks at how much effort went into the product that I'm now consuming. How much respect do I have for that? Okay, so we're moving along to one more thing, and you get your questions ready, guys. Okay, the sort of the impulse that you do avoid, but you're also one of the most active thinkers I know, and you have a very intense commitment to your family and your community, and you actively do that reckoning and get out. Like that. It's not. It's a rare person maybe who does that much work.
Anxiety.
Okay, all right. So I'll get off my meds.
but it has productive uses too.
But you apply it right. And we were talking about, or you and Dave, of course, because you bring your husband into these conversations and your kids in a really deliberate way, this idea of inner emigration and the desire to retreat and sort of back to the polarized art world, political world. We're inhabiting, first of all, the concept, if you don't mind enlightening, and then
Yeah, my husband sent me an article recently in the Financial Times, and I forget the name of the author, but he was writing about something called inner, did you write it down?
I wrote it down.
Inner emigration, which is a behavior that was noted under Stalinist Russia, Nazi Germany, where people couldn't physically emigrate, and horrible things were happening around them, and so they emigrated within, and they just withdrew. They stopped engaging in public life, they stopped reading the news, they found distractions or other things to do. And the
John Thornhill at Financial Times. Yes.
And the other thing the author talked about was how it's even, in ways, it's even more intense now because of the velocity of our news cycle and the pervasiveness and the invasiveness and the barrage of news. We're always connected. On top of that, this philosopher who's cited in this article, James Williams, he's a technologist and also a philosopher, was talking about how brilliant this administration is in harnessing this media ecology, right? He calls it strategic.
That's right. What was it?
Strategic
it's
something.
Like service of
strategic distraction.
Distraction.
The idea that you just bombard people, and he had a great analogy, and I don't know if you guys know, what was the term? It was
Don't do this to me. I don't remember. I can pull it up.
When hackers target a website to shut it down, how they do it is they rally together a whole army of bots.
Oh, bots, yeah.
And they all ping the website. And if you do that enough, it renders it useless, right? That's strategic distraction. You just bombard a people with so much stuff and different executive actions and tweets and the sale of Tesla in front of the White House and then this and that, and some of it you may agree with and some that you may not, but most of it I don't. But it's just
it doesn't make clear, yeah.
I'm pretty politically active, but I didn't read the news from November until at all. I was the stupidest, and I couldn't. So I get it. I get why people do it. And the reason that I think that I was thinking about in the context of this talk is when I, as a very, very unscientific survey of my friends in the lead up to this event, I would ask them, one, how are you doing? Most of them are pretty stressed out about the world. And then two, does art play into that? I was just curious about the role of art. And a number of them did say, for me, it's an escape. And so I can think it's back to that, where I feel like, is it an escape or is the entertainment an escape? Because art, the kind of art that hopefully that engages you, because I was wondering if art was enabling this inner emigration, which would be a bummer to me.
Yeah,
because
I don't think
someone who believes in art, and I don't think so. I think, and that's kind of what I was saying about entertainment. It's meant to satisfy that anesthetic quality that Owen is talking about, my son, that he feels after binging a show, isn't what you often feel when you truly connect with a great piece of art. Yep. It's a much more, to me, there's an aliveness.
Right.
For me, I feel really alive and engaged. I actually want to go out and do stuff, whatever the stuff is.
When you said you discussed at dinner over the, I don't get it. It brings you together where if you both just like a nice book or just watched a nice binge of fill in the blanks, so many things I love to binge, but one of those shows, it's like, yeah, I liked it. Did you see it? Yeah, I liked it. And you're done. Where if it's complicated and unclear, there's actual discourse there, which then maybe is the roots of community that we probably need so much right now. Yeah. So bringing that muscle along. So how do you see the connection? We'll open it up in a sec, but because I know you are very deliberate about making sure you continue to write, making sure you don't emigrate completely outside of the, thank God, you continue to struggle, to work the muscles, all those things. When you contemplate community, I know you're very good at maintaining, being out and about, like this kind of effort, like getting in a room, that to me is challenging. It's like you get a little stressed. It's a little you got to put your foot up. You've got to say hello to lots of, people and remember things. And that's challenging. So I think every time I walk into a community space, I think of that as one of the challenges. So how would you tie art and community back together? It's kind of in any way.
I think that for me, again, when I engage with great art, I do feel more of a connection to what? What is it? I don't know. I feel more connected. I feel more alive. To the stream of people that have created things before. I do feel an aliveness that I don't when I consume the more really fun, but just not, I don't know, it doesn't really change my world, my Survivor and my rom-coms, which is my kind of comfort food. But I think there are things like tonight, like events like tonight, book clubs, talks, anytime you gather together to discuss or enjoy. That's why I go to movie theater still.
Right.
I'm like that person who's there in the movie theater because I think that
with
it's
Nicole
different.
Kidman talking to you.
Yeah, right. Just by my, there aren't
magic.
that many people like it, but I still
love it.
love laughing and being afraid in movies with other people. I think it's a completely different experience. And so for me, I always feel better when I gather in those moments.
Those moments, agreed.
To enjoy art.
So I have just to leave you with, I have so many different quotes from you. So that you must like sort of explore these paradoxes that allowing characters to be complicated. We looked a lot at sort of holding complicated truths, that it takes work. You have to, again, sharpening that muscle. I think these are wonderful things to leave the crowd with. And if there's nothing else in particular you'd like to share, we could go to the audience for questions. Okay, Beth.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you have a question, just let me know. I will run the microphone to you.
Yay! Is it about my foot?
It's a fashion statement. She just wants attention.
Actually, my question is about audiobooks and the role you think audiobooks play, and especially in young people's understanding of books and appreciation of art. And it made me think when you were talking about your kids, I have 3 different kinds of readers, one voracious, one periodical, and one who loves audiobooks. And I feel like for me, however they get to it, I'm happy, but I'm just wondering how you feel about audiobooks as a way of moving art forward and also for your own work.
Yeah, I mean, I tried that. So, you know, with Henry, I did try. Yeah. It seemed like it worked for a bit, and then it just stopped working. That also worked because I think I also failed in letting him use his phone too much, and he has no attention span, but that's just about my son. I'm all for it. I mean, my son, when he was feeling homesick when he first got to college, would listen to audiobooks of books he read when he was younger. I think that there's so many reasons that we go to art and to and there's a certain comfort in art that you've visited again and again and again. I think some writers I know don't love audiobooks because they'd rather make the hardcover sale, but I think fewer and fewer people read and consume long, complicated works that I think whatever people will consume. Spend time with. You're asking a lot of people with a book. Not a two. I thought The Brutalist was bad. That was 3.5 hours, but a book is like 6, 7, hours of your life. It's a big ask. Yeah. So I say whatever gets people reading or consuming it, I'm all for it.
Also keeps publishing alive because that is an additional revenue stream. There's no chance you can sell as many hardcovers as you can audio, and they're high margin because of the digital.
Okay, are there other questions?
High margin?
Yeah, because they're free to make.
Oh, right over here.
Piper.
Okay.
Let's go, Piper.
Don't be shy.
This is weird.
So, it's not, okay. During this time of extreme polarization, is the creative process very different now? Like as you're trying to think of your book and ideas come to mind, is it very different environment and ideas don't make it as far because of this highly stressful, polarized time?
I think for me personally, it's really just been because I'm also involved in politics and other things. And I don't mean this to toot my heart, like I'm kind of good at it too. I just question if this is what I should be doing. Because I don't know, like I believe in it. And then also I'm like, but this other stuff might make more of an impact. And right now the world seems like it's aflame. And I have 3 kids that I'm leaving this world to. And what's the best use of my time and talents right now?
And she goes through that every single morning when she sits down and does the reckoning.
And I've said it to her, and I've said it to Sarah Rivet last summer.
The
that
reckoning.
Was even before the lecture. I remember saying to her, like, why am I even writing? What's the point? Like, well, shouldn't I be? And you said, no, stories matter, Joanne. That's what you said to me.
Did you say it in that
voice? I tried
voice?
to cling to it. You didn't say it in that voice, but I tried to cling to it. So for me, some of my writer friends, it's not that they are stressed about the world and then they write. I think for me, because I kind of do both, I question it too much. And the truth is you can do both. So why not stop questioning it and just fucking right. But no, instead I question it every morning because that's just, I don't know why. That's why I do it. So.
And
Ask,
anything.
oh, sorry. Have either of you read the book about, the anxious generation?
Oh, yes.
That's out there. And now recently,
spoke here
there have been quite a few articles about the loneliness epidemic, especially among young kids. And, do you have any thoughts on how we can help, this upcoming generation both overcome their anxiety and also the impending isolation? And what this kind of ties into what you were talking about with, everything in the world being so overwhelming that we just immigrate into ourselves. We just leave the world behind. And I think that's leading to the loneliness. And like, how do you think we can lead from that, as older people, how can we help lead so that I'm really scared for this younger generation right now? And how can we help them as a society? Any thoughts?
I'd love to hear what the audience has to say about that. But for me, with my kids and my teens, I try to get them to do things in person. Whenever they're like, I'm playing a video game with Archie, I'm like, go to his house, or he can come to our house and let's get together. Or my daughter asked if she could start a book club if I buy the books. I'm like, yes, start them. And just getting them, go to a movie, get out, get off your screens and be together. I mean, the reason I called Sam on Saturday was not only to talk about tonight, but also because I was like, I've lost my faith in all this. Can I go and talk about this on, next week? And now here, and I'm with all of you, and I feel better. I mean, we are people that need each other, even though we forget about it all the time because we have these amazingly dopamine pushing devices. I just think we have to break it. The fact that my son in college on his own is downloading he's downloading an app to limit the app, but still, it's better than nothing. Apparently it kind of works. My husband's doing it too because he's kind of addicted because I think he's realizing he's not as happy. He doesn't like that lethargy. I don't know, but I don't know.
I think there are some ways that, and I'm going to come to you, Sarah, in a sec. I've interviewed the John Hillman and this guy, Scott Galloway, last week, who are both very, very focused on the loneliness epidemic, particularly among teen boys. And there's no doubt the phone and Meta are to blame. The Meta meaning the Facebook and Instagram, and all the addictive qualities of the way that content is structured right now. But sports, I know it's like maybe just because my mom's a jock, but apparently you really can't be on your phone when you're playing sports. There's Carol, with whom I play tennis. There's and Sarah. I think sports should be required. Your son, when he really focuses is when he's rock climbing.
Yeah.
So finding the zone things that are not where you're not doing the dopamine patting your head. You're in sort of soothing yourself. You're finding the things where you have flow or where you have present tense immersion. It's not easy to do, but if we could teach that, make it cool to be in flow with whatever it is for you. It might be chess, it might be something else. I also think events make the library really cool. Then young people will come here. They have to go. There are reasons you can within communities that we can make it can become necessary for kids to show up. It just does take some really deliberate action. There's a lot there. But wait, Sarah.
So I'm glad you mentioned that, Joanne, about our conversation because I was thinking about it. And I guess I feel like the crux of the anxious generation thing is that it deforms a sense of what it means to be human. That when you're on your screen, whether you're 9 or, 59, too much, then you get disconnected from the feeling of what it means to be human, which means being in company with other people, which means being in community, like you were talking about at the end of your conversation about different forms of community. And it seems that story, I want to respond to your existential crisis every morning, because it seems like story is precisely the thing that throughout time and place has defined what it means to be human. There is no culture that doesn't have story as a practice in any moment in time and anywhere in the world. And so, if we don't have that, which it's under threat, not just in America at this moment, but with really all kinds of forces of modernity, with individualism, with capitalism, with distractions, like all the things about the modern world, put that concept of story and community under threat. So I guess I would flip the existential crisis around, and I wonder if it's maybe like the importance of what you're doing, that it's a form of truth-telling and connection that's actually scary because it's going against the grain of all the kind of social, environmental pressures to crush it.
No, I actually completely agree with that. It's just, does the world need another one of mine? That's my thing. Like, does the world need another one of my books? The world has a ton of books, a lot of, so mine is very specific. I believe in the role of stories wholeheartedly and the importance of art. It's just in those moments I'm like, does the world need Joanne Ramos to write this?
Yes.
When there are a bunch of other books out there, and she could be out there getting these folks to not cancel anymore because it's over, but do other stuff. And in the end, I write every day because I need it to.
Yeah,
it's how I digest the world. It's all I've written since I was in first grade. I have 9,000 diaries that my husband won't let me burn, even though they're horrible and they're so embarrassing. And they're from through my middle-age year. I mean, middle school. I mean, it's terrible. But I can't stop writing.
But you have this story that you're motivated by now.
I know. I just have to get through should I be doing this? Maybe I should be. And then I do it. And then I go to the Bronx and do my thing. And
that's the truth right there.
And I think if it wasn't that, I would probably be angst-ridden about something.
And maybe it's okay. It's okay if it's for yourself, like to keep yourself fed and nourished, that the writing is for you to interpret the world sometimes. And maybe you feel like it should be for everybody else when it's cool if it's for
maybe
you.
Maybe it's enough that I have to do it.
That you have to do it.
Why did it have to be? And then also I'd say I'm involved in this group called the Moth. It's a storytelling organization. We get together and tell story. I mean, we do shows and slams. And that's one of the things the Moth keeps questioning. It's like, what should we be doing? We do all these live shows, but maybe we should be doing more digitally. And I'm not saying we shouldn't do stuff digitally, but I'm like, but you know what? I think we need to come together and tell stories. We have to keep doing it, even if it's not as scalable and all the economics of it. I get it, but I agree with you. I think it's more important what the Moth does in telling stories now than it ever has been. I have my own.
We have a person behind Sarah.
I don't have a question. I just have a comment. I really like your idea of complicated art. It's making me think of what I read and what I watch, what's complicated and what's not complicated. And as a result of your lecture, I'm going to seek out more complicated, and I'm going to try to get my kids to think about that. Like, I think the ideas, especially in the polarizing world, right? It just grows your mind, right?
Yeah, and there's some nights when all I can watch is Survivor. And it makes me fine. It's fine. I just don't, I notice with myself, that's why my son's comments, I know they weren't like groundbreaking, but how he felt lethargic after. I sometimes seek out, like, I just want to turn off my brain. And I'll just watch something that just anesthetizes me. And what I'm realizing in this time, it doesn't make me feel better. It makes me feel more disconnected. To your point, like, I also have to push myself. And in a weird way, the best thing that happened when I was stuck in bed is I told myself, I'm not going to watch TV because I might get depressed just watching TV. And I read. And I was way more alive than I am now. My husband's like, why were you in such a good mood in bed? I'm like, I don't know. He's like, now you're out in the world hobbling around and you're grumpy again or whatever. I'm like, I think my mind was so alive.
Yeah, I think both is good, but I think you're right with what you're saying. I feel the same way, right? I feel more alive. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Challenging, just a little more challenging than like Reacher.
Okay, last question.
This has been incredible. Thank you so much.
That's Eliza.
I do think that public conversation has this new role of solace and community that's like never been more important, and this is one of them, so thank you. And Joanne, just in like the nuts and bolts of it, like I'm familiar with that anxiety every day, every minute, right? So then,
got a lot of writers
but
here.
what is your schedule like? How do you keep yourself going? Like,
I mean, for me, but always, I only think well in the morning. So I just have to get that little crisis out of the way super early. Just feel it at the pit. And art, because I was listening to the Schubert G-flat impromptu. I didn't know what that was before Hillary sent it to me in November. I listened to it every morning. I listen to something beautiful every morning. I try to let that pit in my stomach dissipate. I've now moved my news reading, unless I really have to, until after I write, and I write. Then I get wised up on the news and what I'm going to do with the rest of the stuff that I do. And then I'm freaking out. But I try to get in that chunk already. Before, I think I have to protect it because otherwise I go off. I will admit to you that for 2 days, oh, shoot, I don't want to talk about politics. Okay, there were 2 days when my husband and I, something happened in the news that we thought was just so sad that was happening. And my husband runs a company, and he was home. Both of us sat around and couldn't do our stuff. And I know that's what they want, people want, is for us to stay in bed and not do our stuff. So I'm going to keep doing the stuff. But it was 2 days. My husband, his colleagues, where are you? He's like, I'm working from home, but we were just depressed, And then I listened to my Schubert, and I got going again.
Yeah, I had one where I said, someone was like, are you going to make it to this meeting? And I was like, no, I'm sorry, I'm dead inside. I won't be making it to that meeting. Not that one. And they're like, that is the best reason I've ever heard for not making it to a meeting. But so I feel, thank you, Joanne. Thank you, library.
Thank you.
Also,
Thank you, library.
We should say that
Yes.
I love the way this comes back around to community, because I remember the epicness of Phyllis Marchand just being one of those women about town, whether wearing green beret or whatever, or other things, just doing things, but always amid humans. It seems like that seems to have, from afar as a child, been fed her. And so what a great thing you guys have created is an opportunity for us to get our butts out of, away from the screen. And by the way, I'm only looking at this because it has questions on it. I wasn't doing the crossword. And so what a great tribute, and hope we keep doing it over and over. Thanks, library.
Thank you so much, and thank you both for a wonderful conversation. I'm going to just make a few points. Number one is I have a picture of Phyllis, probably in the archive upstairs, showing up at the wedding that we did.
Amazing.
In her, I remember that she came in.
Amazing.
I will find that and send it to you, because that was, it was this crazy moment that Leslie Berger, who was the director back then, said to me one day, we should open the library at 6 a.m. and see if anybody comes to watch the wedding. And we did. We filled the room, and Phyllis was there cheerleading them on. And people came before work, and we served scones and tea, and we watched the royal wedding together. And we had to do it at 6 a.m. because of the time difference. And so I do have a picture of her at that event.
So great.
I know I do, because I remember that. And also, one of the other thing about Phyllis is that I always remember on the opening day of this building, her speech, and she also did a song for us.
Of course she did here.
What? Yeah. Yeah, she had to sing for us. That was who Phyllis was. So I have a lot of fond memories of Phyllis in this library. And you made a comment about making the library a cool place for kids.
Oh, that was me, sorry.
That was you.
Not her.
Okay. Oh, so I remember hearing that. I was running around them. I would have to say our library is a cool place. If you ever come to this library after school on our 3rd floor, you cannot get a seat.
That's so great.
Yeah, and we are the gathering place, because we are the core of downtown. We're walking distance from the schools, and I hope more libraries can be like that. And we have an amazing teen advisory board that leads programs not just for other teens but for youth. And so I do think that's a way to lead forward, is to keep our kids engaged in civic life itself and in moving and coming into and gathering. And thank you both for coming and taking your time to talk with us tonight. It is deeply appreciated by the library and by the Phyllis Marchand Lecture Committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Get up. Thanks, Joe. You're very beautiful. You're brilliant. You're so smart.